Here's a 2004 Highlander. The guy bought it years ago for $4,900. He's put almost 100,000 miles on it. Now, in all those years, he had to do some work, but it really isn't the vehicle's fault. The fault is he lives in Massachusetts. So, control arms would rust off, brakes, suspension parts, because of all the stinking salt they use on the road in the winter. It's going to eat them up. Now, interestingly enough, the body doesn't rot away because it was all done correctly by Toyota. When they made these things, even this older one, they put them in zinc-based primer, electrostatically charged. The bodies, they don't rot away. They're fine. It's all the ancillary stuff like control arms that are made out of steel, brake rotors that are made out of steel. Everything that's made out of steel, of course, is going to rust. That's the one advantage of a real top-end car like an Audi. Their control arms and stuff are made out of fancy aluminum. Aluminum doesn't rust, so they will last longer in a corrosive environment. You're going to find that all the steel parts will eventually rust. So, whoop-de-doo, the last 3 years, he said he probably spent a couple of grand having stuff done. You think about what he paid, you know, 4 grand. You got over 100,000 miles. We're going to check it out, make sure it's still going. I'm sure it is, but the computer will tell us the truth about that. Now, as we look under the hood, you see all the bugs. They got a lot of bugs here, too, and they eat up your paint. V6 engine, Toyota's electronic variable valve timing, which works great. But it's a 3.3 liter engine with a rubber timing belt. I did recently have a timing belt and the water pump changed, which is a good idea because, lo and behold, this is one of the few engines Toyota ever made that's an interference engine. The 3 liters weren't, the 3.5 liters weren't, but the 3.3 liters were. Who knows what they were thinking about? They don't make them like this anymore. The only company that I have a beef with is Honda today, because Honda's still making V6 engines with timing belts that are interference engines. Everyone else has timing chains, but no. They got some weird idea. I guess they don't want to spend the money swapping their productions over, but these are very good engines. Change the timing belt every 100,000 miles or so, and you're not going to have any problems. But I do have to tell you the truth. Okay, I've been working on cars for 55 years, and I started working on Toyotas in the early 1970s. You know how many broken timing belts I've seen on these V6 engines? None! And I've seen people with 350,000 miles with still the original timing belt. They're made that well, but if you're not a riverboat gambler, you might as well change the belt and the water pump every once in a while just to make sure bad things don't happen to you. But they are that well made. Okay, it's a Toyota. It's running smooth. I can hear the fan belt making a little bit of noise. Who cares? It's been raining. It's wet, right? Original AC compressor, it still works. The alternator is original. Most of the parts are still original, you know? And since it's made in Japan, you know the quality is good. Now the seats are starting to fray from age. This is a work vehicle. You can see lots of stains from work-related things. But when you pop the seats back, hey, there's all kinds of room for storing stuff. Now it's got 214,000 miles on it. It's all-wheel drive. Does the system work? Of course it still works. It's a Toyota. They make good all-wheel drive systems. Now, personally, I'm not a fan because I don't like the extra expense and the worst gas mileage, but he lives in Massachusetts. A lot of people like it for getting around in the snow. Now, he uses all-season tires, and he said with the all-season tires and the all-wheel drive, it's fine. He doesn't bother putting snow tires on. You get a lot more grip with all-season tires, all-wheel drive, than you will just all-season tires. That's just common sense. Most people, if they have just two-wheel drive, they'll put snow tires on the drive wheels, right? But in this case, he just keeps the all-season tires on. You don't have any problem driving around Massachusetts in the winter. So we get out the brand new Autel scan tool. It's all plugged in. We'll diagnose it. It's loading itself. Read the VIN. We'll do a fault scan. Go through the whole system. The whole car, so it's going to take a little while. So we'll look around. The steering wheel's still in good shape. Windows, everything works. Heat, AC works. Look, it's still got the original Toyota with a CD player and a tape deck. And they still work. It's sunroof, but it's raining. As you can see, lots of lights are on, so we're probably going to get a bunch of codes, even though it's still running pretty good. And you can see there's quite a few codes, so let's start up here. Now, while we're waiting for the scan, it's slow because it's an old vehicle. It's a 2004. These armrests always wear out. That's typical. You can see it's a work vehicle. It's been to Hades and back, but it's still going. And since all these lights are on, I expect some codes. So far, there's 14 codes. You can see he's got the old radio, but he's also put in a Sirius XM so he can listen to music he wants to listen to. and not be limited to old tapes or CDs or even older an AM FM radio. Be patient with these old vehicles. It's been a few minutes and now it's 63% done. These old cars had much slower computers, so interfacing with them does take more time. Now we're up to 72. We're getting there. Cadillac inefficiency, bank 1, bank 2, bank 1, bank 2. So the catalytic converter is not working all that well. The ABS system, the right front speed sensor circuit, the left front speed sensor circuit, the right rear circuit, the left rear circuit, and the ABS control system. So the ABS system, it's messed up, as is the airbag system and the sliding roof communication stuff. Well, it's closed, so we don't care. So we'll check this CAT code out here. And the machine itself gives you a big explanation of the codes, tells you how the system all works, and tells you that the trouble areas are the catalytic converter, and the front exhaust pipe, gas leakage, airflow sensor, oxygen sensors. There's lots of things it could be. So let's start it up. Look at the engine ECT data. Now, as I look at the live data, I can see the oxygen sensors are working. The vehicle's running in closed loop. It's not open loop, so those systems are working. Now, if the customer wanted me to, with that nice Autel machine, I can start doing tests that shows what part to test, how to test the wiring, how to test the cats. It's got a freeze frame oscilloscope. It's got a wave generator. So you can figure it out. And it has the information on it to figure it out. But in this case, the guy doesn't give a crap. You know why? Because it's running perfectly fine and it's older than 15 years. And in Massachusetts, when they're older than 15, they don't do emissions testing anymore. It runs perfectly fine, as I was telling him, at a customer in Houston with the same exact vehicle, even the same color. How bizarre it was written. And his check engine light kept coming on. And it was for inefficient catalytic converter. So for 4 years, he'd bring it to me, I'd reset it and get it so he could get it inspected, because at the time, it wasn't 25 years old, right? I'd reset it, get it to go good enough that he could pass it for the emissions. Well, after driving it 4 years the way it ran fine, and the light kept coming back on for him, he came the 5th year. And he said, you gotta set it so I can get my car inspected. So I plugged in the machine, the code was gone. This is 5 years. He did no repairs to the car. He just switched from one Exxon station to they opened a Shell station closer to his house, and he was lazy as could be, so he went to the closest gas station, and that better gas burnt more efficiently, because that code means the catalytic converter isn't working at 100%. Sometimes as little as 94% efficiency, it'll trip that code. But if you live where you got to get it inspected, yeah, on these things, they build the catalytic converters into the exhaust manifold. It's a V6, there's one on each side. Since they're both reading bad, you're talking about big money, and since it runs fine, does anybody really care? No. And as for the ABS, well, the sensors aren't working, and the modulator itself. Now, it could be the modulator and the sensors, or just the modulator, and then it trips the sensors because it's messed up and it thinks the sensors are wrong. But it doesn't really matter, because on these, the ABS system is called fail-safe. When the ABS stops working, you get to normal, non-ABS braking. If he slams the brakes on now real hard, he can lock the wheels up. So if he knows how to drive, he won't get into trouble. The modern cars, the real modern cars, they have it tied in with vehicle stability, all kinds of control stuff, and it creates a mess when they break down. But an older one like this, hey, you still feel like you're braking okay. It's just you don't have anti-lock brakes, so you got to understand. If you got to stop fast and it's wet outside, you'll have to pump the brake. So you see the ABS light, and a guy like me says, well, you want to spend thousands of dollars possibly for a new modulator and all this work? Or if you're happy with the way it goes, drive it without ABS brakes. Got this modulator assembly here and the labor to change it out. You probably do like him and just drive the thing around. I'll take it for a little ride. We got to look in this case. And we're looking. You can see around these, there's no blind spots. Now, it's a Highlander, so it is relatively high. You got it. So we can go over a little bump here, not have to worry about things dragging. And yeah, it's old, but hey, it still goes down the road. Sure, the tire pressure monitoring system doesn't work. The ABS system doesn't work. The vehicle speed control doesn't work. The airbag doesn't work, and the check engine light is on, but it still goes down the road. Conditioning still works. Well, we got clearance to the right, but no clearance to the left. All right, we have an opening. Here we go. We'll floor it. Now that V6 engine sounds great, still shifts like a dream, even with 214,000 miles on it. And truthfully, it is a blessing that it's over 15 years old, because now he doesn't have to do the emissions testing, so he doesn't have to fix all these stupid lights that are shining and flashing. Still rides pretty good, corners pretty good, makes a nice work truck. You can see he works the heck out of it. You're high enough up in the air that you can see where you're going, and being all-wheel drive, hey, doesn't get stuck in the snow, and he's only using all-season tires. Yeah, it's got 214, but I mean, I've seen these things with 514,000 miles on it. Yeah, they might shake, rattle a little, maybe a couple speeds of the fan on the blower for the AC don't work anymore, but hey, they're still going down the road and they're still blowing cold. So here we got an old 04, and yeah, the bugs have eaten the paint up. They're very acidic bugs here on the East Coast. I don't know what it is. And yeah, lights are flashing. It still runs perfectly fine. It just goes to prove that PL430 codes for inefficient catalytic converters, often they don't affect the running of the car one iota. If your catalytic converters were actually bad, what happens is they clog up, and then your temperature gauge will start running towards the hot, and when they get bad enough, you'll only be able to go a certain speed. Like it'll go 50 miles an hour and no faster, and when it's really clogged, it'll go like 10 miles an hour. But that's not the case with this. You can see it's still, the engine runs like a sewing machine. The transmission still shifts good. So these old things, hey, let's just say they don't make them like they used to. So why not stick to the old stuff as long as you can? 2009 Venza that's got 278,626 miles on it, and it still runs like a clock. This one was made in Kentucky. The ones here were made in Kentucky for the US market. Now the new ones are made either in Japan or in China, and they only come 4-cylinder hybrid. That's all they offer in the new ones. So they're quite a bit different beast than this older one is. So let's get to analyzing this older one and see how it could go this many miles and still run pretty good. Take out the stupid beauty cover, throw it in the grass. It's a V6 engine. They go and go. This one still runs pretty much the way it did when it was new. Still gets the same gas mileage. This particular one gets about 28 miles a gallon still on the highway. I've seen people get as high as 38 miles a gallon. But realize one thing. If you're going to buy one of these used, decide what you want. It's a relatively heavy vehicle. Even though it's based on the Camry chassis, it's a relatively heavy vehicle. So you're really better off, if you like performance and overall riding, if you're going to tow anything, to get the V6 engine. Mind you, the 4 cylinders will get you where you're going, but they just have enough oomph. And if you're going to tow something, forget the 4. You'd only want to get a 6. And like I said, the modern ones that are made in Japan and China are all 4-cylinder hybrids. So they got the hybrid to get more horsepower for taking off, right? This isn't. This is just a traditional V6 engine with coil-on plug ignition, as you can see, regular fuel injectors, port fuel injectors, 1 injector for each cylinder. It doesn't have the complexity of Toyota's modern dynamic force engine, less things to go wrong. Not quite as good gas mileage, but less things to go wrong. This baby has a very dependable 6-speed automatic transmission, and if you want, you can shift it manually. You can put it here, so you can go up and down. You can see 4, 3, 2, 1, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can shift it yourself if you want. Most people just put it in drive and leave it that way. Now, generally, these transmissions still shift quite well, even with this kind of mileage, 278,000. We'll see when we road test it, but I can tell already, when I put it in drive, it's still idles smooth as silk. It's not shaking or anything. Now, being what they call a crossover SUV, whatever the heck that means, it's front-wheel drive. This isn't all-wheel drive. The new ones are all-wheel drive, but this is front-wheel drive, which is plenty enough for most people. You'll get better gas mileage. There's less complexity. When you get a bad tire, since it's not all-wheel drive, you don't have to buy all 4 tires. Save a lot of expense. If you don't need all-wheel drive, my advice, don't get it. The reason people like them is because these things are comfy. You can see it's quite stylish. There's a lot of room in them. See, they got a lot of stuff here. Check in the back. You can see, that's a lot of stuff. He's got a lot of junk in here. Of course, it's hidden under here. You can put the seats back. You can hold a lot. Basically, comes down to it, this thing is just a giant version of my Matrix. It's just bigger. Now, with almost 300,000 miles on it, they want to see what shape it's in, so I'm getting my fancy scan tool out. And here we go. We do diagnostics. It's beeping, so it knows it's doing its thing. Standalone diagnosis. It's already read the VIN. That was fast. Knows it's Venza, North America, 2009. 2GRFE 6-cylinder engine with a smart gate. Topology scan. All the CAN systems. So here we go. And while it's doing it, we'll look inside. Dash is still in excellent shape. Got the factory radio and everything. Nice big armrest. Seats are in excellent shape. Did a scan, 300,000 miles. It's only got 4 codes, and they're all the tire pressure monitoring system, which you will often expect. Each tire has a sensor built into the valve stem. The batteries go bad over a period of time. Most people aren't going to spend the money replacing them all, taking the tires apart. So, for many of them, because the batteries are probably dead, or they might even have different tires. They bought this thing used, so who really cares? We'll erase it, but I'm sure it'll come back because it knows the sensors aren't sending any information. So let's start it up, look at the data. We can see the MAF sensor's doing fine. Black like it's supposed to be. In closed loop like it's supposed to be. The air fuel ratio sensor's not bad. 1.00 was perfect. It was 1 for a second, then 995, 998. So it's only a few thousandths off. So considering this thing has all this mileage on it, it's doing pretty good. Sensor 1 and sensor 2. 0 is perfect. It's minus 0.0403, minus 0.02, minus 0.0. That's almost perfect for a car this old. It's exactly the same on each, front and back, and that's normal. Like I tell people, catalytic converters theoretically will last forever because they don't burn out themselves. They're a catalyst to burn on-burn hydrocarbons. If you got a car that runs really good, doesn't burn oil, doesn't have problems, the cats can last forever, and these are still working perfectly, even though they have almost 300,000 miles on. You'd never see that in a Nissan or a Chrysler. They just don't last as long because the engine systems wear out, then they destroy the cats. These engines don't wear out, hence the cats don't wear out either. The transmission data here, it's all normal. 6-cylinder Toyota, 0 misfires across the board, no misfires. Sometimes they feel a little weird shift between gears, so let's look at the transmission data, the whole setup. Live data, we know it doesn't have any trouble codes, and we'll go through these. Oil temperature is normal, and as I said, these electronically controlled 6-speed transmissions are pretty reliable. But as with everything else, realize as they age, sometimes you get a little slippage. I used to get in our old Cressida, and they said sometimes it might have a little jiggle in between gears. Well, that's pretty normal when you got this kind of mileage. Does it a little with this kind of mileage. So we're going to road test it and see. Now, it's an older car, so there's no backup camera. You got to look back. Alrighty, 300,000 miles practically, still smooth as silk. We'll see how this tranny shifts. I didn't even feel it shift into second gear or third gears. That thing so far, okay, I felt a little there. There's a little rumble, and you'll often get that with this kind of mileage. Hey, that's a lot of mileage. Things are going to be worn inside, so that particular shift, it's a little bit worn. I felt a little vibration. The main problem with these cars as they age is you're so used to perfection. When you get a little squibble like that, you think, oh my God, it's not perfect anymore. Hey, I'm not perfect anymore, and I got more than 300,000 miles on me. Here we got our little drag strip here. Down on Tobacco Road, I feel like I'm in an old rock and roll song. There, you felt it. You felt that jiggle. That's just plain wear from old age. Up the hill, it's got no problems going uphill. And we'll see what it does on the little drag strip. Nobody behind us to rear end us, so here we go. Hey, it burnt a little rubber. Interestingly enough, when we gave it full bore, the transmission didn't do that jiggle hesitation. It's got more pressure on it, so that just shows you when you're driving slow, it's got to be absolutely perfect so then it jiggles. But when you give it all kinds of power, it just goes right through the gears without the shuddering. So that shows you it's not a serious problem. It's just wear from old age, and it didn't do it when we took off as fast as it could. Let's see if it does it when we go into passing mode. No, it didn't do it then either, so I gotta say, it's nothing to really worry about. I roll the windows down to get a little air, and hey, it's still a great vehicle for cruising out in the countryside. See what it does, this little 20-mile-an-hour squiggle. We'll speed up here. So we're supposed to slow down, we'll speed up. We'll see what it does. And what does it do? It works perfectly fine. No squealing tires, no problem whatsoever. Nice and smooth. See right there, I felt the jiggle. Okay, and it doesn't when I accelerate slow, but when I accelerate fast, it doesn't. Yes, it's slightly worn, but there's really nothing to be done about it. You're not going to rebuild a transmission. It still works as good as it does, and it only does it in that one gear. Still in excellent shape with almost 300,000 miles. Yes, it has a jiggle going from second to third gear. It's not perfect anymore, right? Now, it only does it when you're going slow. When you're going fast, it doesn't. When it downshifts, it doesn't. It's just starting to wear out between second and third gear. And they'll often do that to some extent. How often do you do that? Once you shift it through, you're generally not driving driving either second or third gear for that long, so you're not going to spend a fortune rebuilding the transmission with this kind of mileage on it. So really, it was an excellent made vehicle in its day. It's still performing good with almost 300,000 miles. It's a Harley Davidson, 2003, and he got it with like 5,000 something miles on it. Is it possible? Yes, it is. I'm going to tell you how. Now, if you remember my Yamaha story, it sat for a long time. Nobody wanted to buy it. Everybody here in Rhode Island wants to have a Harley Davidson. And so I got this dirt cheap. Well, I can't believe my eyes when he showed up with his Harley. He just bought it for $2,000. And it's got 5,000 miles on it. How did that happen? One, this is a Sportster 883. I'm a bike rider myself. I like these a lot better because they're more fun. They don't weigh as much. They're a real motorcyclist motorcycle. They're not a poser. They're not somebody, which I always find humorous myself, who's on a big old Harley with saddlebags, and they're driving like turtles, right? And the people in SUVs and minivans are zooming by them in the highway, right? When I was young, they were going by everybody, driving like maniacs. Now, people are passing Harley drivers in minivans and SUVs. So it's a completely different ball game with the big Harleys. But these are actually a lot more fun to drive. Now, granted, he found this thing in a barn. The guy says, what doesn't run? Didn't have any gas in it, had a dead battery. He went with his Frontier, threw it in, took it home, went to AutoZone, bought a battery, got a jug of gasoline, put it in, pushed the button, and voila, it started up. Now, you might think, well, he was really lucky. No, these are air-cooled motorcycles. Air-cooled engines can sit a really long time. I had British motorcycles that sat for 15 years, and I do the same thing. I throw a battery in, put some gas in. Of course, they were really old. They had ticklers on them. Each carburetor had a little tickler. You pushed it until gas came on your fingers, kind of made your fingers smelly. Then you'd kick the thing over and away it went. Air-cooled motors, they can sit a long time. The water-cooled ones, a lot of times antifreeze is bad, corrodes, locks up the piston rings. Air-cooled motorcycles aren't really that way. Granted, it had the original tires, so you're talking about 19-year-old tires. So the first thing he did was put new tires on it, front and back. And that's a smart thing because, one, it's a motorcycle. You got two wheels. Car, you got four. One goes bad, you can still pretty well handle, get out of the way. You lose a tire on these, it's goodbye, Charlie. And two 20-year-old motorcycle tires. You know, they're dry rotted. They could explode at any moment when you're going fast down the road. But even more important, three, these are new tires. Nice and pliable, right? That keeps them on the road. The original tires that were still on it had plenty of tread, but they were rock hard. You know what that does? They slide. You slam on the brakes, you slide. You try to accelerate, the rear tire will slide and the whole motorcycle will fall over. Don't mess with motorcycles and crappy tires. You want good tires. You see cracks, get them. You know they're 20 years old, get new tires. Don't take a chance with your life on tires. Believe me, I've been on motorcycles that got flat tires and it scared the heck out of me. So every time before I ride, I get on a tire gauge and I check the tire pressure. I don't care. I'll do it every time because I don't want to be stuck. And yeah, they only go a certain speed, right? This thing will go about 120 miles an hour. You take one of these 100 miles an hour, you're holding on, baby, let me tell you. Okay, so we'll start her up. Nothing sounds like a Harley. That's what sells them, the sound. They actually tried to patent the sound, but they lost in court. You can't patent the noise that a machine makes, but they tried. And this noise is one of the reasons that I predict, and you watch, I'm going to be right, that the Harley Davidson live wire electric motorcycle is going to be one of the biggest failures of all time. Because one, they don't make any noise. They have a limited range too. You can keep putting gas in this thing. The electric Harleys have an extremely limited range. And what they did, they're always trying to pull fast economic moves at Harley. They're one of those companies that's always trying to buy back its own stock to artificially inflate the value and stuff. What they did was, a few months ago, they decided to split Harley Davidson on one side and Livewire on the other. So they sold, as an initial public offering, $400 million of stock in Livewire, right? But between March and now, the people that bought it said, this stinks. They sold $375 million worth of the stock away. Harley Davidson had to buy it themselves. It would have collapsed. So now Harley Davidson owns 90% of LiveWire, which was the company that they said they wanted to split apart. Well, it's not going to work. And you know why? Because these are an American icon. They have an iconic sound. They got the image. Electric versions, they don't make any noise, and if they make noise, it's fake noise. And they have a very limited range. The whole idea of a motorcycle is you get out on the highway. You're free. You can go wherever you want. You can ride into the sunset. Well, if you had an electric Harley, you'd be riding into the sunset and run out of electricity. You'd be stuck on the side of the road. So this thing sat in a barn for almost 20 years, and it started right up. It's mainly because it's air-cooled. Smart. You can see as we go upside down, it's an AGM battery, and what does he do? He watches my videos, so he hooks a battery tender up and has no problems at all. He watches my video. It's the first motorcycle he's ever owned. Kind of interesting, because the first motorcycle I ever owned was a 650 Chop BSA Lightning. Now, it was the fastest production motorcycle in the world in 1966. It didn't even have 60 horsepower. Things are a lot faster today than they used to be. Now, this thing is 47.9 horsepower and 60-something pound-feet of torque. The V-twins have a lot of torque, right? They take off fast. And being that this is his first bike, this is the kind of bike you should get. Don't go out and buy some screaming 200 horsepower Japanese motorcycle. You're going to kill yourself. That's too much power to handle. This thing's got plenty of oomph. It's a lot of fun. Like when I was a kid back in the day, I had a lot of fun on that BSA, and it went like stink. It's just like this. You get to about 120 and it just stopped. It wouldn't go any faster. But do you really need to go that fast anyways? It's a lot of fun driving these things around. Now, he brought it over to me from Massachusetts. I'm in Rhode Island. It's his first bike. It's the first time he took it on the highway. He said going 70 was just so cool, leaning forward a little. You feel the elements when you're going 70 miles an hour on a motorcycle. Believe me. And like I said, you hear this? So do the people you're driving on the road with. They'll notice you. They'll hear the rumbling. Imagine a silent motorcycle. It's bad enough that people say, I didn't see him on a motorcycle and I ran him over. Well, you can hear this. You cannot hear an electric motorcycle. They might not see you, then they won't hear you, and then no one will see you as it's all over. Quiet motorcycles are not a wise thing. He was just telling me about a friend of his that bought a fancy Charger for about 100 grand. He was going down the highway, the supercharger went and the whole engine went, pfft. Well, there's 100 grand and it broke. And here's two, and it's still going quite well. So really, it just goes to show. Everybody thinks the price of everything is so sky high. There's always something out somewhere if you spend a little time investigating. Now, like any motorcycle, you can polish all that out if you want. The rims are still in good shape. And the spokes, they all get like that. And you can get a little Dremel and polish them all up. It's not that hard to do. Being an 03, it's a 5-speed transmission. And he says he wished it had another gear because it's really screaming when you're going fast on the highway. But he's got a girlfriend. If she was riding on this thing when it was doing 80, she'd be back here screaming. But he said she hates it. She's not going to get near it. So, this is the, cool cruising seat. It's got a big old monster one for the passenger. But the guy that sold it to him said, I don't ever want to see it with a big ugly seat on the back. And since his girlfriend hates it, that'll probably never happen. Unless he decides to trade it in on a really skinny girlfriend that'll fit in this tiny little thing. So here it is. I've been made a fool of. I thought, wow, I got this great Yamaha for 3 grand, right? He got this Harley for 2 grand in Massachusetts. Mind you, it wasn't in Rhode Island. As I said, the tires were old and all dried out. He went to a motorcycle shop, and here's the reason you don't want to go to a motor shop. They wanted over $1,000 to change the front and rear tires, mount them, put them on, right? And he said, ugh. He bought the tires himself. He paid $140 for the tires. He took them off. He said it was a pain, but he took them off. Then he took them to a tire shop. They charged him $80 to put it on and balance them. Saved himself a lot of money. Bike shops, most of them are total rip-offs. They just think, what does this kid know? I'll just charge him whatever I can charge him. I'm a cheapskate. I put my own rims on. I know how to balance them, but really, hey, it only cost them 80 bills for their work, so that's what you do. Stay away from the motorcycle shops. They're just going to take you for a long ride. They wanted to charge him half of what he paid for the bike to put on 2 tires. It's just ridiculous. So there you have it. A $2,000 Harley Davidson that sounds like this. Now I feel feel embarrassed that I paid $3 grand for that Yamaha. Well, not really. My wife would never get on this thing, but I might be able to convince her on that if I tell her I won't go over 40 miles an hour when she's riding on the back. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.